Hello, welcome to Life Talk for December 21st, 2017. I'm Mark Crutcher.
And I'm Renee Hobbs. Thanks for joining us.
Yes, thank you very much for joining us. And as you can see, I'm still without my glasses, and I will always be without my glasses from now on.
And he's not as bruised.
I'm not as bruised up. I don't look like Tulane and my wife have been beating on me like they were before. So, but next month, I'm going to get my other eye done, and it will be. But it's really weird right now to have 20/20 vision in one eye,
yeah.
darn near blind in the other one.
I know.
Been for all these years.
That's why you need to take the lens out of your glasses and just walk around with.
Yeah, but you look weird.
Yeah, you'd look really weird.
Look really strange. But actually, the doctor told me that some people do that.
Yeah.
But
I wouldn't do it.
Yeah, it was kind of weird. So anyway, I'm going without. But it's really neat. If you're ever thinking about, if you're old and worn out and half dead like me, and somebody tells you need to get cataract surgery, don't be afraid to do it. It's pretty cool. It'll change the way you look at things.
He's an advocate.
Yes, I am an advocate. I'm just waiting until January 9th to get the second one done.
Yeah.
Yep.
Then you'll be complete.
Then I'll be done. Anyway, on a less happy note.
Very much.
Yeah. We all remember the Terri situation that happened a few years ago, where basically the state of Florida murdered this young lady, primarily because her husband apparently wanted her murdered. Right. There was some behind-the-scenes hidden motives, I think, in that deal. Right. It's pretty obvious.
Yeah.
And basically, Father Frank was the guy who was the spokesperson for the family and was the intermediary between the family and the media and so forth. And he's told me, he said, I was talking to her the day before she finally died, and she was fine. She was talking back and forth and coherent and everything, and then she died the next day.
It's so sad.
And basically, they murdered her.
Right.
We've got it's not exactly the same situation, but it's a similar situation going on up in Massachusetts right now. And the person who's kind of broken this story and pushing it around the country is joining us from her home in Birmingham, Alabama. Terri LaPoint. How are you, Terri?
I'm doing well. Thank you.
Hello, Terri.
Thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
So this lady, Beverly Finnegan, age 69, Newton, Massachusetts. Why don't you fill us in on the details? She was sick or had some problems, went to the doctor, and they discovered what?
Well, she fell, and the doctor said that she had some kind of a lung infection. She wasn't really feeling sick or anything from the lung infection. She went to the doctor because she had a fall. So that was fine. That was never addressed later, but the doctor wanted her to come back and follow up with him or her, and they did not. This was a lady that really didn't go to the doctor much, didn't like dealing with doctors, didn't like pharmaceuticals. So she didn't go back to this doctor very much. She ended up going to the hospital for something, and just a couple weeks later, this doctor wrote a letter to Adult Protective Services and said, hey, she's got this horrible infection, lung infection, that's going to take a year to treat, and it's just bad, and if she doesn't get treatment, she's going to die within weeks or months. That was last October of 2016, so well over a year. Over the next couple of months, they filed to have her picked up, and police showed up at her house, and they refused to allow her to come in, or they refused she and her sister lived together, and they refused to allow the police in the house and the social worker, and they came in anyway. They barged in, and they seized her and took her and locked her up. And then they said, well, she's violent and paranoid because she doesn't trust doctors or government officials. And they started giving her medications for psychotropic drugs that she'd never been on before. She'd never had any kind of diagnosis of any kind of mental illness. She worked at a job in the tech industry for 27 years and was well respected. But they decided that she was crazy because she didn't trust them and started drugging her up. And she was saying, look, they're trying to kill me. They're doing some things in here. They're not good. I want to go home. And they wouldn't let her go home. She had assigned her sister as a medical proxy about 4 years before, just in case anything ever happened. Well, they said, well, the judge and the court said, well, let's suspend that medical proxy. We're going to assign some strangers, some people you have no clue who they are, and they don't know you. We're going to assign them to be your guardians. So over the course of the next few months, her health began to decline. She was begging this past summer, guys, get me out of here. They're hurting me. They're not helping me. In September, some people went to visit her, and they were not giving her food and water. They were saying, well, she just throws up. She's not doing, you can't give her any food. Well, they take her food, and she would eat just fine, and she was hungry. She wanted to be fed. She wanted food. And they wouldn't even leave water in her room. Well, in November 30th, December 1st, November 30th, she had a heart attack at the nursing home, but they weren't doing anything. And her sister was there saying, hey, guys, help her. She was without oxygen, supposedly, for about 30 minutes until they got her to the hospital. She was unresponsive, and they started CPR. And now they've got her on life support. They're saying that the doctors at the hospital and connected with the guardian organizations are saying, hey, she's brain dead. She's not going to make it. We got to pull the plug. And her sister said, hey, I think y'all just have her sedated. I think she's been responding to me. And I think that she could come out of this if y'all would get her out of y'all's hospital. And they're arguing with her, and apparently, the attorney, according to some people that I spoke with on Monday, there was a whole bunch of attorneys for the hospital, for the guardian organizations, and these guardians that were arguing to the judge, hey, we need to pull the plug on this lady. And so there's the sister and their attorney, their new attorney, on the other side saying, whoa, hey, wait, stop. And they actually made, the attorneys actually made the argument to the judge that, if she has another heart attack, then it would be very painful for her to have to be intubated and have the CPR and all of that. And the attorney for the family, Lisa Belanger, says, you're saying that would be worse than death? It's very illogical thinking, but they are trying to pull the plug, and they go to court. They go back to court on Friday, and the judge is supposed to decide whether or not they let this woman live or die.
We had this situation that we covered here on this Live Talk in England.
Charlie.
With Charlie,
Charlie Gard, yes,
Charlie
I remember
Gard,
that
yes.
well.
And we mentioned at the time that we don't often get wrapped up in issues that are outside the United States, but that this could happen right here, and it has happened before with Terri Schiavo and with others, and right here in Massachusetts.
Yes, it's happening with Beverly.
And the point that we have made here many times in the past in covering these stories is that what paved the way for all of this to happen was the legalization of abortion. We've talked here many times about how abortion touches every issue in our society, and we've shown how that's true. But this one directly touches it, because what abortion said was that life has no intrinsic value. Mm-hmm. It only has value to the extent that it profits the rest of society. Mm-hmm. That's what. So in other words, you can kill this baby because he's unwanted, or he's unhealthy, or he's too expensive.
Right, and you can kill this elderly because they're costing us way too much to keep alive.
Or they're unsightly. Yeah. And, we've made the point, Scripture says you reap what you sow. We've killed 60 million babies in this country, over 60 million, because they were unhealthy, inconvenient, and too expensive. The generations of people that did that are now entering their 60s and 70s,
yes, and
they're becoming too expensive, unhealthy, and inconvenient.
Right.
And the people that are going to make the decisions about them are going to be the survivors of the generation that they made that same decision about.
Right.
And what we better all be praying for, is that God was lying to us when he said you reap what you sow. But my problem is, I don't think God was lying to us. I don't think God ever lied to us about anything.
I don't think so.
But Terri, do you see that point? That
that makes perfect sense. Now, something that I've said for a long time is Planned Parenthood and Child Protective Services, same story, different chapter. It's the buying and selling of children. Because we know that Planned Parenthood was selling body parts of children. What a lot of people don't realize is that once a person is a ward of the state, whether that be a foster child or an elderly, a senior citizen, a mentally incapacitated person, once they are a ward of the state, legally, they can be used as medical lab rats, guinea pigs, used in pharmaceutical testing, drug testing, medical research, without their family's knowledge or consent.
Well, you know, several years ago, again, another story we talked about here, there was this big moral outrage in America and in the West in general, in Western Europe, over the revelations that the Chinese, who practice capital punishment, the death penalty, were actually selecting people. They had you take all the people in China who are in prison under a death sentence. Mm-hmm. They were selecting who to execute by the parts they needed. So if they had a guy that had a healthy liver, let's say, and they had a person who was dying that needed a liver, then they would choose that guy to be executed so they could take his liver. And we got all wrapped around the axle about this here in the United States and in other parts of the Western world. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking, well, they're not doing anything worse than what we do.
Right.
No.
Right. The when Charlie Gard was going on in the UK, at the same time we had baby Stephen at Vanderbilt Hospital in Tennessee, a baby with Down syndrome and heart defects, and then Naraya was in the hospital in Atlanta with trisomy 9, a very rare medical condition. Both of those children's bodies and tissues were being used for medical research, and they got custody away from the parents through Child Protective Services, and we believe that the primary reason was so that they could use these children for testing for medical research. And it's very real, and both of those children have now passed away here in America.
You know, we again, another story we covered was a situation, I don't remember what state it is, but some state was bragging about they've almost eradicated Down syndrome. Do you remember that? A few months ago we did that.
Iceland or Greenland?
Iceland. Yeah, not state. It was a country, Iceland. Mm-hmm.
Through abortion.
Through abortion. And the interesting thing is they were trying to hail this as some gigantic leap forward for mankind and saying, we've all but eradicated
all of the Down syndrome babies
Down syndrome. Mm-hmm. But they did it without making one single advance in medicine. What they were doing was killing them. Well, you can't name me a problem, a medical problem or a social problem, homelessness, unemployment. We can make unemployment zero tomorrow if we'll just go out and execute everybody today that does not have a job. Then we have made unemployment zero. Mm-hmm. You can do the same thing with homelessness, child abuse. Every child that's out there being abused, shoot them. Then they're no longer being abused. You've eradicated child abuse. And, you know, you say, well, this is preposterous. You know, that's outrageous to even suggest such a thing, which it is. But it's no more outrageous than Iceland coming out and saying, oh, look what we've done. We've just about eradicated Down syndrome. And then you look at it and you say, yeah, the way you did it was you killed all the kids with Down syndrome.
Right. They're very proud of it.
So how is that any different saying we've eradicated child abuse by killing all the children that are abused?
Right.
Or a situation like this. I mean, you know, there was a time in this country where there would have been moral outrage about a thing like this, something like this going on. The churches would have been in the streets over something like this.
And the churches are largely silent. The stories that we cover at medicalkidnap.com, we're not hearing the response out of the churches that I would think would be there. The belief is that if Child Protective Services or Adult Protective Services is involved, then it's because the family has done something terrible and horrible. And what we're finding, looking at the evidence, is that is absolutely not true. In fact, with child abuse, less than 20% of the children taken by Child Protective Services are taken for actual abuse, and less than 20% of the allegations are even substantiated. So many of these children are taken and adopted out permanently when their parents literally have done nothing wrong.
Well, there was a situation right here in North Texas several years ago where Child Protective Services took 3 children away from a family because they were homeschooling. And the social worker in this particular office thought that that was abusive, so they took the children away.
I remember that story, yeah.
Now, interestingly, a few lefties here that we have in Texas, and we have a few of them here just like you have them in Alabama, I'm sure. Well, I know you do. They thought that that was an open invitation for them to pass anti-homeschooling laws down in Austin. So they went and introduced some legislation down there. It failed unanimously. How often do you see a bill go to the Texas legislature and fail unanimously? It doesn't happen.
Right, not often.
But it happened here.
Yeah.
But what they were going to attempt to do was to have homeschooling deemed abusive, so you could take children out of homes where people were being homeschooled.
Now, what they do now, the social workers have gotten smart enough and figured out that people will be in an outcry if you take the children for homeschooling. So they will notice that somebody's being homeschooled, and they'll find other grounds. They'll make up other grounds if necessary to get those same kids. So homeschooling won't be used as grounds to take those children, but the social workers, homeschooling is a reason that many social workers are taking kids away, and they're looking more closely at these families. And I will say this is a bipartisan issue. We see Republicans and Democrats equally. We see judges that are both parties. We see people that are both parties that are involved in this corruption all across America. I hear stories that are very similar from people all across America, all different walks of life.
I'd like to.
And what people don't realize is that in guardianship, as with this lady, and in Massachusetts, and with Child Protective Services and adoption and foster care, these are multi-billion-dollar industries.
Oh, yeah.
There are people making lots of money by stealing people out of their homes.
Yeah, Christine Shaw put on Facebook, she goes, over the recent years, the Lord redirected to be involved with elder care, private duty, watch clients be quietly euthanized. Pennsylvania it is legal to withhold food and water because they are considered medicine that you sign off on a living will. I mean, it's just it's going on
water
ever.
Or medicine.
Yeah.
So therefore, you can withhold food and water because all you're doing is keeping their medicine away from them.
Right. Yeah.
And people don't realize this. You ought to go online and read what it's like to die of thirst. I mean, it is horrible.
Your organs shut down.
And I mean,
it's a very painful
it's not
death.
like, oh, I'm real thirsty. Uh-oh, I'm dead. Yeah. It's not like that. It's a horrible way to die.
Right.
And
that's what her sister states in this article, is that she would go into where Beverly is at, and she would see food and water, or water at least, in the other rooms, and her sister had no water whatsoever. So,
yes.
Yes.
We people better wake up and realize what's going on here, because this situation like this is just the beginning of this. Because again, I go back to the same thing: you reap what you sow. And these past few generations that have killed over 60 million babies are now reaching the point where they're in the same exact situation that those babies were in, and the survivors of those babies' generation is going to be making decisions about them.
Right.
That's where we are today, and this may be the very first part of this. You do reap what you sow, and it always goes back to the same thing, Renee. This is at its core. We fight this battle with the tools of the world, but because that's what we have access to and control over. But at its core, this will always be a spiritual battle. This is a continuation of the battle that started in the Garden of Eden, and it just changes formats, but it's the exact same battle.
Right.
And you just have to choose what side you want to be on. That's the bottom line.
That's
and we have to fight. And situations like this. This woman, and I know this doesn't mean much to y'all, this woman is exactly the same age as I am. So this could have been somebody that I went to school with, or somebody I dated, or or chased around in school, or whatever it might be. But she's my age, and we're entering that age now, like I said a moment ago, where the people that from the generation that we murdered are now going to be in control of us, and that's what's happening right here. I guarantee you, if you go back and you research the people that are running this scenario, there are going to be people that are in that generation.
Right.
And you know, Satan has pitted one generation of Americans against another generation of Americans. That's what's happened here, and this is a continuation of it. So we better recognize as a nation what's going on here, and we better stand up and fight before it's too late, because there will come a point at which it will be too late. It'll be way too late for us to do anything about this. We can still do something about it now, but we're rapidly approaching that point. When you look at the kind of people that we're electing to office and the kind of moral defectives and degenerates that we're putting into writing our laws and the laws that we have to live by. And, you know, of course, this is happening in Massachusetts, ultra-left, godless, Marxist-controlled state. But this could happen in Alabama. This could happen in Texas.
Right.
This could happen in.
It could happen anywhere in America. I mean, there's literally no family is truly safe from this kind of thing, because of the money and the power that is involved. And there are laws. I had a state legislator from Arizona tell me, you know, Terri, what good does it do to pass more laws? They're not following them anyway. The social workers are not following them anyway.
There's some logic to that, because we see that all the time in the abortion issue, that states will pass laws and then fail to enforce them. We saw that right here in Texas not too many years ago. So, but the fact is, we got to stand and fight. We don't have any choice about that. That's what God calls us to do. And not only does God call us to do that, but He's promised us that if we will do it, we will win.
Yes.
He said the gates of hell will not prevail against you. This right here is a gate into hell. This is like an abortion clinic front door. That's a gate into hell. So we just have to trust God and say, we're going to put our faith in Him. We're not going to put it in the Republican Party. We're not going to put it in the church. We're not going to put it in other men, other women. We're going to put our faith in God and do what He tells us to do. And then ultimately, it's His responsibility to deliver the victory, and He will, because He never lied to us.
Right.
He's never lied to us. Did God ever promise you anything He didn't give you?
No.
I challenge anybody to call me and tell me that God ever promised them something that He didn't give to them. He will.
Sometimes the answer is wait, or not right now.
Right.
And sometimes the enemy hinders things, just like he did with Daniel, and in the book of Daniel. But sometimes the answer doesn't come immediately, and a lot of times it doesn't come when it's the most convenient.
Yeah, well,
but
God
He does always answer, and He's always faithful.
God is not impatient. Impatience is a condition of humanity. It's not. God's not impatient. He doesn't need a watch. He doesn't need a time. He doesn't need a calendar. None of that stuff means anything. So we're the only ones who get impatient, and this is a good example of it. But anyway, your website is medicalkidnap.com.
Yes.
And I encourage people to go there and see what you guys are up to. And
we are on Facebook as well. This is social media driven. A lot of the attention has come through social media, through people sharing our stories. And on our stories, we generally have a call to action or how people can help at the bottom of the story. The legislators, our phone calls mean something. When they get inundated with a bunch of phone calls, then that can change the outcome. And we've gotten kids home. We've gotten we've seen outcomes change because people got involved. And as you've said before, ultimately this is a spiritual battle. This is anytime that I encourage any of your listeners, when you see one of these stories, pray. Please pray. Pray for justice. Pray for freedom for these families, and share these stories.
Right.
Because more and more people are learning about what's happening, and at some point this has to change.
Yes.
The alternative is absolutely unthinkable.
Yep.
We have to win. We have to.
That's absolutely correct, Terri. Well, Terri, thank you for joining us, and keep us posted. If you have any other stories like this that are coming up that you think need attention, be sure and let us know. We'll get it out as much as we can.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you,
Thank
Terri.
you, Terri.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
You know, the battle goes on, and it changes formats, but it's the same battle.
Right. Yeah. I hope people pray and they do call the legislator and they talk about this story right here, and they do something. They help Everly.
This poor lady's laying there, you know, and I don't know how much aware she is. She may not even be aware that she's in this situation, but it doesn't matter if she's aware of it or not. She's in that situation, and she shouldn't be. And it sounds like to me, I mean, I agree with you, something you said before we went on air. There's got to be more to this than what we know. Because how can people just be this patently evil to do something like this?
Yeah.
But even if there is more to it than what we know, and I wouldn't doubt that there is more to it than what we know, it doesn't justify this.
No, absolutely
There's
not.
nothing you can come up with that'll justify what they've done to this woman.
Yeah, no.
And if they can do that to her, you know, you mentioned something I mistakenly told you guys, is that they told me when I had my surgery that I have real high blood pressure and I need to do something about that. And I mistakenly told that to you in Tulane, so now y'all are harassing me about that. But
Everybody else needs to, too.
what? Needs to what?
To do something about it.
What are they going to do? Kidnap? They're going to kidnap me? But here's the question. Let's just say, now I'm going to pay attention to this because it is. I looked on the line. It's extremely high. It's right on the
It's very high.
dangerous level.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to do something about that. But let's just say that I didn't. Does that doctor who did my surgery and identified this, is he now going to call somebody and say, go kidnap this guy?
Right, because he's not taking his high blood pressure meds and therefore could give him a stroke and he could die.
Right. So we're going to take him somewhere and kill him.
That's exactly right.
So,
that's anybody in the...
When I'm hearing this, and you brought this point up before we were on the air, that this is very similar to me not taking my blood pressure. If I don't do anything about it, I don't even know if I have to take blood pressure medicine. I assume that I do, and you know how I am about taking drugs or anything. If I don't take an aspirin, if you've seen me take an aspirin, you know I'm hurting real bad, don't you?
Right.
7 years you've been around me. How many times have you seen me take anything?
Not often.
No, I don't do it. So let's just say that I decide, hey, I'm not going to take my blood pressure medicine. Does that now give the state of Texas the right to come do to me what the state of Massachusetts
To come
has done to
kidnap
this woman?
you and take you and force you into
Yeah.
assistant living
And ignore the will of my family, or if I've written a medical power of attorney to somebody, or my wife is still alive and can watch over, does that mean that they just ignore what they want and burst into our house and kidnap me?
Right. Well, and in this case with Beverly is that apparently she had this lung infection, and even after her being kidnapped, they didn't do anything about it. So that would be the same with you. I mean,
Right.
they would kidnap you and still try to kill you and not do anything
ignore
about
the
it. Right.
ignore the high blood pressure.
Right.
Well, we're out of time for this, obviously, but it looks like to me, from what I'm reading in this article, that she did not have a lung infection.
Right.
The doctor was wrong. It says here it didn't exist. It never did.
Yeah.
So does this mean?
Who knows?
Who knows what happened here?
Right.
And here's the thing about it. When they finally succeed in murdering her, when the state of Massachusetts finally succeeds in murdering her, they'll drop her in a grave, and we'll never know what happened. We will never know what really happened here. That's the problem that we have.
That is.
Anyway, you got anything else there?
Nope. Nope. If you have any show suggestions like this one was, just send them in to us, and if we use it, we'll send you a mug.
Absolutely. We need to send mugs to 2 people on this one. One person alerted to us, and then to Patty as well. I mean, to Terri as well.
Yeah.
All right.
Will.
Can you handle it?
Yep. I can handle it. I got it.
Right. Okay.
All right.
Thanks for joining us. Until next time, remember, Life Talk is not here. Life Dynamics is not here to put up a good fight. We're here to win, because winning is how the killing stops. We'll see you next week.